Okay, welcome to this series of videos. These videos are intended primarily for my research assistants in order to help them learn to write computer programs to code in C to write psychology experiments. And if you're listening to this video, you have presumably you're going to get to do all this with nothing but free software. Nothing. You don't have to buy a compiler. You don't have to buy an IDE, an integrated development environment, anything like that. All of it is based on free software that you can get. You can get it from me for now, and then as you go off into your lives, you can get it from the internet. At least as long as they're supported. Anyway, so if you're listening to this, presumably you have installed, you've gotten the software from me or from somewhere, and followed the instructions very, very carefully, keystroke by keystroke, because if you get anything wrong in the sequence, it will not work. And you have installed the MinGW compiler, the Allegro game programming library, and the Xemacs code editor. All right, so here we have the Xemacs icon on your desktop. You should have one as well. And I'm going to open that first and give you just a very brief introduction to Xemacs and to opening things with it and looking at code. So Xemacs is really nothing but a glorified text editor, but one that recognizes C code and can do things with C code. So I'm going to open up my code, which I keep here in my documents in a folder called programming. You can see here some of the programs that I've written. We can see the folders. I'm going to open up Starter. This is the one that I give to you guys to help you get started. And basically, Starter is a very simple program. It does a very simple thing. It just shows red and green circles, and the task would be to push the mouse button right for red, left for green, and it records the which press was actually made and how quickly it was made. So the reaction time. I'm going to go ahead and open up the code now in Xemacs and show you how to just sort of set yourself up in Xemacs for doing this sort of thing. Let me widen Xemacs a little bit so we see a little bit more of what's going on. Let me move it over a little bit so I stay within the window of what I'm recording here. Now, one of the cool things that Xemacs will do for you to help you read C code, if you go to Options, Syntax Highlighting, in this buffer, click that, and it will highlight the syntax for you, and this just helps you to see the difference between things like the type of variable, a variable itself, things that have been commented out, that sort of thing. All right. Another thing that you're going to want eventually under Options, Display. It displays a lot of stuff by default, but it does not by default display line numbers. Don't know why that is, but you want to go ahead and display line numbers. They're now displayed here at the bottom. And the reason that's important is that when you start getting bugs in your program, errors, the compiler will try to tell you where the error is. It doesn't always get it right, but it at least gives you a starting place to start looking for where you've messed up your code. All right, I'm going to go ahead and make this video really short. I'm just going to show you how to open the code in Xemacs, and then I'm going to show you how to open a command window so that we can start compiling that code. And then we'll take you through a tour of the program piece by piece in one or two subsequent videos. Probably two, because I want to try to keep these short. All right, so now a command line, or also known as a DOS window, a DOS command window. The way you get it on a Windows machine, you go to your Start menu, and where you have probably been used to searching for things, you type in CMD, and then you see it come up here. You can come up here and click that, and it will open a command window. But you don't need to do that. You can just hit Enter. As soon as you type in CMD, Enter. For some reason that didn't. I don't know what happened there. Let's try that again. CMD, enter, and there we go. Now we have our DOS command window. DOS stands for Disk Operating System. For those of you who were born after the invention of Windows, this is how we used to interact with computers. In between Windows and actual punch cards, this was how computers were controlled. All right, so this is called a cursor, or this line is called the prompt. And it shows you where you're at on your computer. So I'm in C, users, and then my user folder. What I need to do is get to the folder where I have my programs. So I'm going to do that with the command cd for change directory. And I'm going to change the directory to my documents/programming. This is where I keep all my programs. And now I can see the contents of that directory by typing dir for directory. The equivalent command in Unix, or like on a Mac, or in MATLAB for that matter, is ls for list. But here if I type in dir, it will list the contents of that directory. And here you can see what I've got are a bunch of subdirectories in there with just a few actual other things like executables and so forth. And now I'm going to actually cd into the starter folder, because that's where I have my code that we're going to work with today. I'm going to list the contents of that directory. And you can see here the starter.c program that is open right here. You can also see some other things that we have to have in that same folder in order for it to run. A parameters file, the font that it's going to use, and so on. You see a subdirectory here where I've got the software as in the form that I'm going to give it to you guys. The eleg42 DLL, that one's very important. And so on. All right, so it's actually, we've already got the executable here too, starter.exe. That's the actual program that you click, it runs. But I'm just going to show you really quickly how to compile it. And you will always want to compile first to make sure that your compiler is working, and also to make sure that your code that you're starting with starter.c working. So the way you compile is you type at the prompt gcc space -o space, and now the name you want for your executable. So I'm going to call it starter.exe space, and then the name of the code, starter.c. And now it's just a space, although because of the width of the DOS window, which I cannot make any wider, it's going to go to the next line, but this is not an enter or a return, it's just a space. Space, -L, eleg. Now the -L means link, and eleg, it tells it what to link to, and this tells it to link to the Allegro library. Basically, it's telling it to use eleg42 DLL, because that's the DLL file that recognizes all the Allegro commands. Without that, your compiler doesn't know what to do with things like circle fill or that sort of thing. All right, I'm going to press enter. It compiles. It does give me a warning. It always gives that warning whenever this command here, text out center, is used. This is a command from the Allegro library. I don't know why it has this problem with it, but anyway, the code still runs just fine. So when you see this warning, don't worry about it. It's not a problem. All right, so now we've compiled the program, and we can go to the folder where we have the executable. So I can come here to my programming folder and starter, and I can click on it and run it if I want to. Let me show you another way to run it though, which is sometimes handier while you're working with and compiling these programs. You can just type the name of the executable, starter, and hit enter, and it's going to run that program. So let me just show you briefly what it does. It just shows red and green circles, and I'm clicking on the mouse every time one of them comes up, right for red, left for green. All right, and now it exits out, and if I now go back to the folder, there's a log file. The log file is actually already there because I've been playing with this for a while. So if I open this up, you can see here that I've actually run it a bunch of times, and it just keeps appending the new data to the old. We'll see in the code how that, or where that happens in just a little while, but this is the run that I just did. So you can see here it's recording the reaction time, how quickly I was able to push the button to each stimulus, and how many trials they are. You see that the trial count starts at 0. C is what we call a zero referenced language, meaning that it starts counting at 0, not at 1. Other programming languages start at 1 instead of 0. Anyway, it's not important for most things, but occasionally it will be important for you to know that and understand that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, and hope that it all came out okay. On the next video, I'll take you through kind of a walking tour of the starter.c code.